Greetings, Internet. Welcome to the show. So, today we're going to be talking about the Nephilim causing a mass extinction. Which mass extinction are we talking about? Actually, we're going to be talking about the Megafauna Extinction. And there's been like 5 mass extinctions. Of course, everyone knows about the comet that wiped out the dinosaurs, which, by the way, is hypothetical. They don't really. They think they have a crater, but they don't have the actual rock itself. So it's all hypothetical. But so all those were pretty massive extinctions. All the five main extinctions, the 5 main mass extinctions are they wiped out like oodles and species after species died. But the most recent mass extinction was actually not as bad as those, but it was still a huge event, and it was called the Megafauna Extinction. And I'm going to read a quote from Alfred Russel Wallace, the co-discoverer of the theory of natural selection. We are in an altogether exceptional period of the Earth's history. We live in a zoologically impoverished world from which all of the hugest and fiercest and strangest forms have recently disappeared. Yet it is surely a marvelous fact, and one that has hardly been sufficiently dwelt upon, this sudden dying out of so many large mammalia, not in one place only, but over half the surface of the globe. That is from the book, The Geological Distribution of Animals. Where are these? Why are all these big? Megafauna means large animal, technically speaking, megafauna is anything weighing over 100 pounds, but some of these surpassed a ton in weight. They were ginormous animals. We're talking about such things as elephant-like mastodons, car-sized armadillo-like glyptodonts, giant ground sloths. There was also the steppe rhinoceros. We've got the giant elephant bird, a giant species of deer known as megaloceros, Gigantopithecus, a giant ape that was between 10 and 15 feet tall, weighing 1,200 pounds. A giant monitor lizard that grew between 18 to 26 feet, estimated to weigh up to 4,000 pounds. Down in Australia, there were these huge marsupials known as rhinoceros wombats. A tiger-sized carnivore known as the marsupial lion, a giant short-faced kangaroo. All these species just, where did they go? They died out. Why? It's called the Megafauna Extinction, and it is a scientific mystery to this day. We've got technical issues, America. There we are. Thank you, robots. I've got some not so smart devices. We've got woolly mammoths weighing 9 tons, standing 16.5 feet high at the shoulder. A short-faced bear known as Arctodus simus, one of the largest carnivores to ever walk the planet, 11 feet long, weighing 2,000 pounds. All these things and all these continents disappeared in a brief window of time. Nobody knows why. There's 2 theories. The first theory is not a good theory. The first theory is climate change. And the reason why that's not a good theory is because even in rapid climate change, animals adapt, they move, and the climate change that's believed to be happening at that time, which we don't know much about. I mean, we're talking about, we're analyzing gas bubbles in ice cores. We're studying tree rings. We don't have a lot of data about the weather 10,000 years ago. We don't have a lot of solid, evidence for what the climate's doing and what it's doing in, climates vary. Like right now, there's huge variation in the world's climate today. So even if 10,000 years from now, people were able to determine, what they think the weather might have been like in New York at this time, that doesn't mean that's what the weather is anywhere else on the planet. So climate change really isn't a good explanation for this, and most scientists don't believe that that's the reason. Especially, why would it only affect larger animals? I have in one of my books, I think it's called the Megafauna Extinction. No, it's called The End of the Megafauna. It's right there. That white and orange backed book. The End of the Megafauna by Ross McAfee. He talks about the possibility that maybe there was some disease that wiped out the large mammals. Large animals. They weren't just mammals. They were reptiles and birds and fish and mammals. So that doesn't seem to hold water because diseases are usually species specific. Sure, they can jump species, but the idea that there's some super disease that affected all these species and weirdly all these large, just specifically large species. So then there's the overkill hypothesis, and that is they were hunted to extinction by the growing population of mankind. That is probably the leading theory. I believe that's the consensus opinion, but there's not a lot of good evidence for it. That there's just they don't have any sites that show. I think there is a few, like 3 or 4 sites that have that show butchering of bones, but you would expect to see a lot more of that. But that's the thing about the fossil record. Think of how many the early European settlers that came over and were hunting the bison to extinction. Those bison were just sitting, there's all these. They were shooting at them from trains. Like they would have a train going through the middle of the plain somewhere, and guys would be hanging out the windows with their guns and shooting buffalo, and the bodies were just out there rotting. So that's not going to fossilize. That's not going to be in the fossil record. Things like that, it has to be buried. And fossilization is a unique occurrence. Everything else just disappears in the fossil record. So what is the answer to this? Well, if we look at the written record, there is specifically if we look in Genesis, it talks about in Genesis 6 it talks about the sons of God being seduced by the daughters of man and having children, the heroes of old, the mighty men of renown, the Nephilim. Though that story right there is identical with the stories that are universal around the world of immortal gods seducing mortal women and having demigod heroes for children. And that's the same story. It's just some cultures worship them as gods. The gods and the demigods were worshipped. In the monotheistic religions, they were not worshipped, and they were hardly mentioned at all. Instead of every ancient story revolving around something to do with, Hercules and saving the day and blah blah blah, they just get a brief mention in the Bible. But in the Book of Enoch, it says, "The Nephilim devoured all which the labor of men produced, until it became impossible to feed them. When they turned themselves against men in order to devour them, and they began to injure birds, beasts, reptiles, and fishes, to eat their flesh one after the other, and to drink their blood, the earth proved the earth then the earth reproved the unrighteous. A little bit of a tongue twister there. So that's from the Book of Enoch. That gives us a little bit more detail about the Nephilim. And so when we're talking about heroes, there's no greater hero than Hercules. And his most famous story is the 12 labors of Hercules. 10 out of those labors, with the exception of getting the girdle of Hippolyta and cleaning the Augean stables, 10 of those involve capturing or slaying beasts. And out of that 10, 2 of them are domesticated animals. He has to get the cattle of Geryon, and he gets the mares of Diomedes. But 8 out of those are capturing or killing some giant beast, whether it's the Cretan bull, the Nemean lion, the Hydra. He does get the apples of the golden apples of the Hesperides, but that's guarded by a dragon. So he's slaying dragons. He's slaying the Stymphalian birds. So all these giant creatures he's having to slay. That's these same stories. Like these heroes were renowned. Like you see the same thing with Horus. There's a Horus of Behutet. He is known for battling all these crocodiles and hippopotami in the Nile. So we've got these stories of these heroic demigods running around the earth, slaying all these animals. It's in the Book of Enoch, and that is building upon what's in the Bible. But what's in the Bible is the sons of God and the daughters of man and the heroes of renown, and that parallels these immortal gods and the mortal women and the demigods that are born to them. So we have in the mythological record, and we have in the biblical text and the extra biblical text the explanation for this. The heroes were running around the earth slaying all these animals, and apparently, according to Enoch, they were drinking their blood and eating their flesh. So this was a pretty gory time, and the flood is what is caused after this. So it wasn't just mankind that was being wicked at this time. Mankind was known to have been violent and wicked, and that caused the deluge. Well, so were the Nephilim. The Nephilim were being, if not more violent, in wiping out all these animals. They're literally, causing mass extinctions around the globe of megafauna. And these must have been incredible battles. Like if you, for instance, watch the trailer for the Dwayne Johnson movie Hercules. In that trailer, they'll show you the Nemean lion. They'll show you the boar. I can't remember where the boar is from, but this giant boar and slaying the Hydra. These must have been like epic battles between man and beast, like nothing that we've seen today. Like if you've seen movies where they've got this hunter hunting these wild animals, like those were really popular back in the day. Like back in the I want to say around the 50s and 60s, they had these movies where these hunters were capturing some wild rogue beast somewhere, and they've tracking it down and hunting it. This must have been epic versions of that. I mean, to think that like those bears and these woolly mammoths, like these things, you can't even really fathom their size. If you watch that trailer, you'll see this boar that's like the size of a bison. Like that's what we're talking about here. The megafauna are gigantic versions of already large, terrifying creatures. Like that 20-some foot Komodo type dragon, monitor lizard. Like a monitor lizard is basically the same thing as a Komodo dragon. That's terrifying to think about. Like these just must have been the most epic battles that we can possibly imagine, and they became the stuff of legend. They became the stories of Hercules and Gilgamesh and Theseus and all these demigods that were running around. So, anyways, I think that mystery is solved if we look at the written record. The overkill hypothesis doesn't. No one can really verify that. Climate change doesn't seem to be good explanation, but the Nephilim, the heroes of old, they're literally described doing this very extinction. So anyways, let me know what you think. Jump down there in the comments, and